I want you to picture a scene.
Okay.
Is a scene you know well.
Oh.
Honestly, you probably know it way too well. You are sitting in a conference room.
Oh, boy.
The walls are that very specific, that uninspired shade of corporate gray, the kind that just seems designed to drain your human spirit.
Right, right.
The air conditioning is humming just a little too loudly. Or, maybe it's broken again.
Or let's be modern about it. You're at home.
Yeah.
You are staring at a grid of pixelated faces on your screen.
So many faces.
And you are on mute. Everyone is on mute. You can see into someone's kitchen in the background. Someone else has a virtual background of the Golden Gate Bridge that it just keeps cutting off their ears when they move.
Yes, the disappearing ear trick. And you have a cup of coffee that has gone cold 3 distinct temperature zones ago.
Naturally.
And you are just listening to someone read a document.
Wow.
Word.
Word.
The word. They are reading bullets off a slide that you can see perfectly well with your own eyes. You're reading it faster than they are speaking it. Right. So there is this awful, awkward lag in your brain.
The dreaded read-along. It is the absolute bottom tier of professional interaction.
It really is.
It is essentially an audiobook session, but with terrible production value. And you have to wear a collared shirt.
Exactly. And as they drone on, you feel this very specific physical sensation.
The soul leaving the body.
Yes. It is like your soul is slowly, quietly packing a little bag, putting on a hat, and walking right out the door of your physical body. You look at the clock.
And it's been, what, 45 minutes?
45 minutes have passed. Your to-do list is exactly where it was when you logged on.
Yeah.
Untouched. Absolutely zero decisions have been made.
And the energy in the room is at absolute zero.
You, my friend, have just survived what the organizational psychologists in our source material call a zombie meeting.
A zombie meeting. I absolutely love that term.
Me too. Because it walks around, it makes noise, it eats brains, but it is effectively dead.
It is totally dead. It has no pulse. It creates no life. And honestly, it is the perfect place to start today's deep dive.
It really is.
We have a fascinating stack of research, articles, and case studies today, all centered on one massive theme.
Professional communication mastery.
Right. But I want to be clear right off the bat. We are not just going to sit here and complain about bad meetings.
But I feel like we could do that for an hour and it would be very therapeutic. We could just vent about all the bad meetings we've had.
We easily could. But the mission for this deep dive is different.
We want solutions.
Exactly. We are looking at the engineering required to fix those meetings. We are going to dissect why they fail. And spoiler alert, it is usually psychological, not logistical.
Right.
And then we're going to pivot to an even higher stakes arena.
Yes, because once you master the meeting room, you actually have to master the career. We are going to talk about the engineering behind getting promoted.
The scary stuff.
Exactly. How to turn that terrifying, the can I have a raise conversation, the one that makes everybody's palms sweat.
Absolutely.
We want to turn that into a cold, hard business proposal.
It is a totally natural progression. If you can command the room in a meeting, you are halfway to commanding your career trajectory.
That makes a lot of sense.
But before we get to the solution, we have to start with the paradox.
The paradox. Tell me about the paradox.
Yes. So if you look at organizational theory, or just, how companies are built on paper, the meeting is supposed to be the backbone of the enterprise.
Right.
It is the primary mechanism for decision-making. It is for alignment, strategy.
Yeah.
It is where the actual work is supposed to happen.
The synapse is firing.
Exactly. The synapses of the corporate brain firing.
In theory. If you look at an org chart, the lines connecting the little boxes are basically meetings. That is how information is supposed to flow from one team to another?
Precisely. But in practice, if you poll executives, and the source material here is very clear on this, they rank meetings as the single biggest killer of productivity.
Wow. The biggest killer.
Yes. So the very thing that is supposed to drive the company forward is actually the anchor holding it back.
That is a massive inefficiency. It's like buying a high-performance sports car and then finding out the engine is also the brake.
That is a perfect analogy. So our roadmap for this deep dive is to fix the engine.
Let's do it.
We will start by dissecting the anatomy of a bad meeting and the psychology behind it. Things like groupthink and the bandwagon effect.
The brain stuff.
Right. Then we will move to the solution, which is the 3 pillars of meeting engineering.
Purpose, preparation, and participation.
Spot on. And finally, we will shift gears completely to that promotion discussion.
I am so ready for this. Let's save some souls from conference room purgatory. So let's go back to that zombie meeting. Why is it so incredibly common? Why do smart people, and we're talking about high IQ, capable, well-paid professionals, why do they have such dumb meetings?
It comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of who is actually in the room.
What do you mean by who?
Well, we tend to think of a meeting as a logical interaction between employees. Professional A talks to professional B about data point C.
Right, like we are computers exchanging files over a network. I have information, I give it to you, now you have information. It feels very binary.
Exactly. But the sources argue that we are psychological creatures first. We are employees second.
Oh, I see.
When you walk into that room or log onto that call, you aren't just entering a workspace. You are stepping onto a psychological stage.
A stage. That is an interesting word. That implies performance.
It does.
It implies anxiety. It implies you have an audience watching you.
And it implies vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because we are human, we are subject to cognitive biases that completely derail logic.
We bring our baggage.
We absolutely do. We bring our insecurities, our need for validation, our fears. We bring all of that into the room with us.
So logic doesn't stand a chance.
Not really. The sources highlight two big cognitive biases that just thrive in the meeting room environment. The first one is confirmation bias.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Yeah.
I feel like I know what it is in a general sense. I look for news that agrees with my politics, for example.
Right.
But how does that specific bias kill a business meeting?
Well, confirmation bias is our instinctive tendency to favor information that supports what we already believe.
Okay.
So imagine a team is totally in love with a new project idea. Let's say they're launching a new app feature.
They're pumped about it.
They are so excited. They've spent weeks on the design. They feel like geniuses. They enter a meeting to review the risks.
Well, I can see exactly where this is going. They do not want to find risks. They want to find applause.
Exactly. There could be 5 red warning lights flashing on the project dashboard.
Huge red flags.
Data that says customers do not want this feature, or the budget is too tight, or the technology just isn't ready yet.
But they ignore it.
Worse than ignoring it. Because of confirmation bias, the team literally does not see them.
They are blind to it.
They aren't lying. Their brains are actively filtering out the contradictory evidence to protect the good feeling of the project.
So the meeting just becomes a pep rally instead of a safety check.
Exactly, a pep rally.
Everyone is just reinforcing the delusion like, oh, look how great this button looks, while totally ignoring the fact that the button doesn't actually work.
Precisely. We filter out the dissonance, and then you add the second bias to the mix, and this one acts like gasoline on the fire.
What's the gasoline?
The bandwagon effect.
Which is basically just peer pressure for adults, right?
It is, but it's deeper than just peer pressure. It is evolutionary.
How so?
We are wired for social cohesion. Think about it evolutionarily. Being kicked out of the tribe meant actual death.
Right, you're alone in the wilderness.
If you were the one person arguing with the group near the saber-toothed tiger, you got left behind to get eaten.
So agreeing meant surviving.
Exactly. So we have this deep biological drive to belong, to go along with the group.
Okay, so take that tribal mentality into the modern boardroom.
Imagine the meeting starts, and the boss, or honestly, just the loudest, most confident person in the room, speaks first.
The alpha of the conference room.
Right. They lean in and say, I think option A is clearly the winner here. It's the only path forward.
And suddenly, everyone else in the room is thinking, well, I thought it was option B, but maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe I missed something.
Or maybe if I say option B, I'll look stupid, or I'll look like I'm not a team player.
Exactly. The probability of everyone else aligning with that first view just skyrockets. It's almost mathematical.
That is wild.
We prioritize fitting in over seeking the truth.
Yeah.
We do not want to be the one discordant note in the harmony.
It is terrifying how easily that happens, isn't it? You nod along just because it is safer. You will sacrifice the actual success of the project just to save your own social comfort in that room.
We do it all the time. And that leads us to probably the most critical concept in our source material regarding team performance.
Okay, what is it?
It's a concept that actually came out of Google, of all places.
Oh, is this Project Aristotle? I have heard bits and pieces about this over the years.
It is Project Aristotle. This is a fascinating bit of research because it directly challenges the great man theory of business.
How did they set it up?
Well, Google, being Google, decided to use massive amounts of data to find the perfect team formula.
They measured everything.
Everything. They studied 180 teams, and they had a working hypothesis going in.
What do they think they would find?
They thought the best teams would be the Avengers model.
The Avengers model, meaning just put all the smartest people in one room.
Exactly.
The highest IQs, the PhDs, the folks who won all the coding competitions.
Right. Stack the deck with absolute geniuses, get the best technical skills. But when they crunched the numbers, that was not it at all.
Really?
The highest IQ teams did not always win. In fact, sometimes the all-star teams performed much worse.
Why?
Yeah.
Because they were constantly competing with each other.
A bit of that, yes. It became a status contest, not a collaboration.
Too many egos in the room.
Precisely. But here is the kicker. The number one factor for high performance, the absolute best predictor of a team's success, was psychological safety.
Psychological safety. I have to be honest, it sounds really soft.
It does.
It sounds like something you would hear in a group therapy session, not a corporate boardroom. It sounds like feelings and hugs.
It does sound soft, and that is exactly why so many hard-nosed managers dismiss it completely. They want grit, they want hustle.
Right.
But the impact of psychological safety is not soft at all. It shows up in hard metrics. Revenue, speed, accuracy, innovation.
So how do the sources define it practically?
Psychological safety is defined as an environment where it is safe to take an interpersonal risk.
An interpersonal risk. Give me a concrete example of an interpersonal risk in a meeting. Because when I hear risk, I usually think about losing money or making a bad bet on a product.
Telling the boss they are wrong, that is a massive interpersonal risk.
Oof. Yeah. That is a huge risk, especially if the boss has a big ego.
Or a junior employee raising their hand and saying, I think this data is flawed. Or even just saying, I do not understand what you just said.
Which is so hard to do when everyone else is nodding.
Exactly. In a psychologically safe team, you can say those things without any fear of retaliation or humiliation.
You know you won't get punished for it.
You know that no one is going to roll their eyes at you or cut you off. And here is why that matters for the bottom line. You need the friction to get the polish.
I really like that phrase. You need the friction to get the polish.
If everyone is too scared to point out the flaw, you ship the flaw to the customer.
That makes total sense. If I'm too scared to tell you the engine is on fire because you might yell at me for interrupting, we are going to crash the car.
We are definitely going to crash.
So, the zombie meeting happens because we aren't safe enough to wake it up. We just let it shamble along because nobody wants to stick their neck out and say, this is a waste of time.
Precisely. We prioritize politeness over progress. We choose artificial harmony over constructive conflict.
Artificial harmony.
Yes. And artificial harmony is the silent killer of companies. It looks like everyone agrees, everyone is smiling, but really everyone is just checking out.
Okay, so that is the diagnosis. We have cognitive biases blinding us. We have a lack of safety silencing us. And we have a lack of structure just wasting our time.
That's the disease.
Let's talk about the cure. Because the sources mention engineering the solution using 3 specific pillars.
The 3 Ps: purpose, preparation, and participation.
Let's start with the first one, purpose. This seems incredibly obvious, doesn't it? Have a point. Why do we need an engineering framework for just having a point?
It seems obvious, yet it is rarely practiced in the wild. Think about it. How many meetings have you been to where the purpose on the calendar invite is just catch up? Oh, all the time. Or a sync. Let's sync.
Or touch base.
I despise touching base. It means absolutely nothing. It is so vague. It usually just devolves into 30 minutes of people listing the random things they did yesterday to prove they are working.
The coffee shop meeting. It is nice, it is social, but it is not work. The fix here is rigorous labeling.
Rigorous labeling, how does that work?
The sources suggest that every single agenda item must be labeled with one of 3 verbs.
Decide, discuss, or inform.
Decide, discuss, inform. I really like that. It is forceful. It tells me exactly what I need to do before I even walk in the room.
It forces the meeting organizer to define the output. Inform is strictly one way. I'm telling you something. You do not need to speak.
Got it.
Discuss means we need to chew on an idea. Brainstorm, debate different angles. We aren't deciding yet, but we are exploring.
And decide.
Decide demands a final conclusion by the end of the hour. We are making a choice.
If I see inform on an agenda, honestly, my very first thought is, could this have been an email?
And 90% of the time, the answer is a resounding yes.
I knew it.
That is the beauty of the label system. If you force yourself to label it inform, you might realize halfway through typing the invite that you do not even need the meeting. You just send the update in a message.
It filters out the noise.
But if you label it decide, everyone knows they need to come ready to make a tough call. It creates instant alignment.
You aren't walking in wondering what the vibe is going to be.
Right. We are here to choose between vendor A and vendor B. Bring your data.
Which leads us perfectly to the second pillar, preparation.
Sure.
Because you cannot decide if you haven't prepped. If I walk into that room cold, I can't choose a vendor.
And this is where most organizational cultures completely fail.
Because nobody preps.
Because the standard preparation for a meeting is usually just panic.
It is so true. 2 minutes before the Zoom call starts, you are frantically opening the attachment. You are scanning the first paragraph. You are trying to figure out what you're supposed to know.
While the host is saying, "Can everyone see my screen?"
Yes. You are reading the abstract while everyone is doing microphone checks.
Exactly. Which means when the meeting officially starts, you are reacting, not thinking.
You are operating purely on gut instinct.
Because you haven't actually processed the complex information. The sources point to a very famous solution for this. It was pioneered by Amazon.
Yes. The ban on PowerPoints. I always found this fascinating.
The complete ban on PowerPoints. Amazon realized that bullet points are actually a terrible way to convey complex information.
Why? Everyone loves bullet points. They're so easy to read.
They are easy to read, but they are low resolution. They allow the presenter to hide massive gaps in their logic.
Oh, I see.
You can just have a bullet point that says, "Expand to Europe," and you can wave your hand and say, "And then we grow."
Yeah.
And nobody notices that the how is completely missing.
Because it's just a tidy little bullet on a nice slide.
Exactly. It creates the illusion of clarity.
So what does Amazon do instead of slides?
You write a narrative document, a 6-page memo, full sentences, actual arguments, subject, verb, object.
Like an essay?
Like an essay. It forces the writer to have actual clarity of thought. You cannot hide behind a flashy graphic or a cool transition. If your logic is weak, it shows up immediately in the prose.
And then what happens? Do they get in the room and read the essay out loud?
Yeah.
Because we started this whole deep dive complaining about people reading documents out loud.
No, that is the crucial difference here. They use what is called the study hall concept.
The study hall.
The meeting starts, and for the first 20 minutes, there is absolute silence.
Just dead silence. In a corporate conference room.
Dead silence. Everyone sits there and reads the narrative document.
That sounds incredibly awkward. I can just imagine sitting there, hearing people breathe, wondering if I'm reading too slow and everyone is waiting for me.
It feels very awkward at first because we are not used to silence in groups. We think silence means the meeting is failing.
We want to fill the air.
But in this case, silence means synchronization. It guarantees that by minute 21, every single person in that room has the exact same foundational knowledge.
Nobody is faking it.
They aren't faking it. They have read the argument.
That is a total game changer.
Right.
Because usually the loud guy who hasn't read the material at all still manages to dominate the conversation.
Right.
But in this scenario, you cannot fake your way through it. You have to engage with the text.
Exactly. So when the talking actually does start at minute 21, you jump straight into the high-level debate.
You don't waste time on the basics.
You don't waste time presenting. You spend the time arguing the merits of the proposal. It is vastly more efficient. You skip the what and you go straight to the so what and the now what.
I love that. It forces the meeting to be about the thinking, not the presenting.
Precisely.
Okay, so that is preparation. Let's move to pillar 3, participation. Or as I like to call it, the guest list.
Meeting bloat. It is a very real problem. We invite everyone.
Why do we do that? FOMO.
FOMO is huge. Fear of missing out. Or, on the organizer's side, we do not want to offend someone by leaving them off the invite.
Right. I will catch myself thinking, oh, if I do not invite Dave from accounting, he will think I do not value his input. His feelings will get hurt. He will think we are plotting a hostile takeover without him.
And so Dave gets the invite. And Dave sits there for an hour contributing absolutely nothing, costing the company money, and secretly wishing he was literally anywhere else doing his actual job.
Poor Dave.
The sources suggest a rigorous contribution test for the guest list.
How do we test it?
If a person does not provide unique information that you cannot get elsewhere, or if they do not have specific decision-making authority, they should not be there.
Ruthless. I like it. But how do you handle the people who kind of need to know what happened? Or the people who think they need to be there for political reasons?
The color coding system. This is a brilliant little engineering hack for calendar invites.
Tell me about the colors.
You mark the attendees on the invite itself. Red means required. You must be there to decide or provide key info.
Clear enough.
Yellow means optional. You can come if you want, but we do not strictly need you to achieve the goal. And green.
Green means informed. Do not attend. Read the notes later.
Wow. That is liberating. If I get a green invite, I just got an hour of my life back.
Exactly. It gives people explicit permission to prioritize their actual work over sitting in a room just for visibility.
It takes away the guilt.
It removes the social pressure entirely. You aren't skipping the meeting. You were officially designated as informed. You are doing your job by not attending.
Okay, so we have engineered the invite. We have engineered the prep with the narrative document. And we have engineered the purpose.
Set the stage.
Now we are actually in the room. The silence is over. We have to facilitate the discussion. And this is tricky because, as we said earlier, people are messy.
Very messy.
You have got the loud extrovert who just loves the sound of their own voice.
Yep.
And you have the quiet introvert who actually has the best idea but cannot get a word in edgewise.
Managing personalities is the primary job of the facilitator. And again, you do not rely on luck here. You rely on structure. One technique mentioned in the sources is the round robin. Round robin. Simple enough. You just go around the table one by one.
It seems simple. It almost feels childish, right? Like kindergarten. But it is incredibly powerful.
Why?
Because it forces the loud person to wait their turn. And it creates a reserved, protected space for the quiet person to speak without having to interrupt someone else. It democratizes the airtime.
What about the person who just talks incredibly fast? I know I am very guilty of this. I process my thoughts out loud and I talk quickly. And I know that sometimes steamrolls people who need a minute to internalize the information.
That is very common. For that, the sources suggest silent thinking time.
More silence. We're doing a lot of sitting in silence today.
Just a little bit more. Before discussing a highly complex point, the facilitator says, okay, take 2 minutes, write down your thoughts on this specific question.
Oh, that is really smart. Just a forced pause.
It completely neutralizes the extrovert's natural advantage. The extrovert usually wins the meeting because they process verbally and quickly. They have an idea. They say it instantly. The introvert processes internally. They need a moment to construct the thought.
So the extrovert sets the anchor before the introvert even gets a chance.
Exactly. But if you give everyone that 2-minute written buffer, the introvert can formulate their brilliance. When you finally open the floor, the playing field is completely level.
That makes so much sense.
Speed of speech does not equal quality of thought.
I need to tattoo that on my forehead. Speed of speech does not equal quality of thought. That is such a crucial distinction. We so often mistake confidence and volume for actual competence.
We do it constantly, and we miss out on the deep, innovative thinkers because of it.
Okay, but what about conflict? We talked about psychological safety earlier. Does that mean everyone is just super nice to each other all the time? Like, great idea, Bob. Thanks, Susan. Everyone gets a gold star.
No, not at all. And that is a critical distinction to make. Psychological safety is not being nice. It is not artificial harmony.
Artificial harmony. Sounds like a bad indie band name.
It is a terrible business practice. It is when everyone smiles and nods in the room, but secretly, in their heads, they think the idea is an absolute disaster.
Right. The meeting after the meeting, where you walk out and tell your coworker, well, that's going to fail.
Yes. The hallway complaints. You need constructive conflict in the room. You have to break the harmony to actually find the truth.
But how do you engineer a fight? Because most people naturally avoid conflict. It is deeply uncomfortable.
You gamify it.
Gamify conflict.
Yes. One technique is to assign a devil's advocate, but you have to do it formally, not just casually.
What does formal look like?
You look directly at Susan and say, Susan, for the next 10 minutes, your specific job is to tear this idea apart. Find every single hole. If you do not find a flaw, you have failed your assignment.
That is brilliant because it removes the personal risk entirely.
Yeah.
Susan isn't being a jerk. She is doing her job.
Exactly.
She has official permission from the group to attack the idea.
It completely depersonalizes the criticism. She is just playing a role. And the person whose idea is being attacked does not get defensive against Susan because they know she is just fulfilling the assignment.
It's just a game.
Right. Another incredibly powerful tool for conflict is the premortem.
Okay, we all know the postmortem. That is when you look at the dead body of the project and figure out why it died.
Yeah.
That happens after it crashes and burns.
Yes, when it is too late to fix it. The premortem is a visualization exercise. It happens before you launch. You ask the team to imagine it is exactly 1 year in the future.
Okay, time travel.
The project has failed. It was an absolute disaster, total catastrophe. The app crashed. The customers hated it. The budget is completely blown.
Okay, we are imagining the wreckage. It is smoking.
Now you ask the room the question, what went wrong?
Ah, I see. So instead of asking, is this risky? which people might lie about because they want the project to happen.
Right.
You assume the absolute failure, and you ask for the cause of that failure.
Yes. It allows people to raise their very real concerns, but disguised as hypotheticals.
Well, if it failed, it was probably because the vendor didn't deliver the parts on time.
Boom. You just identified a massive supply chain risk that everyone was ignoring.
That is so clever. It completely tricks the brain out of confirmation bias.
It really does. It flips the incentive structure. Now you are being creative about failure rather than being overprotective about success. You are actually rewarded for finding the flaw.
All right, so the meeting is coming to a close. We have fought constructively. We have decided on an outcome. Now we leave. And this is where the zombie usually comes back to life.
Right. The memory hole.
Because everyone just forgets what we just did. They go back to their desks and the momentum dies.
This is why documentation is the final, non-negotiable step of the engineering. But, and please listen closely to this, do not transcribe the meeting.
Oh, nobody reads the minutes. I have never once in my entire career read the minutes of a meeting I actually attended. It is just a giant wall of text.
Nobody reads the minutes. You only need to record 3 things: decisions made, action items, and key context. That is it. Keep it brief.
Decisions, action items, context.
And for the action items, you must use the specific formula.
There is a formula for action items.
Who plus by when plus specific deliverable.
Give me a bad example versus a good example of an action item.
Bad example. Sarah will look into new vendors.
That is terrible. It is so vague. Sarah might just Google a vendor in 3 weeks. Sarah might think looking into means just thinking about it while she is in the shower.
Exactly. There is no metric. Good example. Sarah will evaluate vendor A and vendor B and present a cost analysis PDF by March 15th.
Specificity is accountability.
Exactly. If you do not have the by when and you do not have the specific deliverable, you simply do not have an action item. You have a wish.
And hope is not a business strategy.
You are just hoping Sarah does something.
Okay, so that is how we master the meeting room. We engineer the purpose, we prep with narratives, we manage the personalities, and we document with absolute precision. If you do all of that, you stop being a passenger in your own career and you start being a driver.
And that is the perfect segue to the second half of our deep dive. Because once you are driving, you generally want to drive somewhere better.
You want to move up.
You want a promotion.
Yes. Segment 2, the promotion. This is the conversation that makes people want to literally hide under their desks.
It is notoriously high anxiety.
Why is that, really?
Yeah.
We are professionals. We know our value. We fix massive problems all day long. We deal with corporate crises. Why does asking for a new title or a bit more money feel like we are begging on the street?
It is the emotional barrier. We have a deep fear of rejection, obviously. We have imposter syndrome. Who am I to ask for this? Am I really good enough?
Right.
And there is a deep cultural awkwardness around discussing money. It feels incredibly personal. We tie our salary directly to our self-worth as humans.
It feels like asking for a favor. Please, boss, can I have some more? It feels very suppliant.
And that is the fundamental error we make. The reframe provided by the sources is this: stop looking at a promotion request as a favor. View it as a strategic negotiation.
A strategic negotiation.
View it as a business proposal.
A business proposal. That changes the energy immediately. It takes the emotion out of it.
It does. You are not asking for charity. You are selling a product, which is you, at a higher price point because the product has added new features and value.
Okay, I like that.
You are creating value for the company. And you are proposing a way to create even more value. You are saying to your boss, if you invest X in me, I will return Y to the company.
But there is a trap here, isn't there? The sources call it the mind reader trap. I think a lot of diligent people fall into this one.
The case of Sarah. This is a classic example mentioned in the source material.
What happened with Sarah?
Sarah was an incredibly high performer. She worked late, she delivered ahead of schedule, she fixed major problems before they even happened. She was the ideal employee.
Sounds like she deserved a promotion.
She definitely did. And she waited.
She waited for the tap on the shoulder.
Yes. She thought her silence showed humility. She thought, if I just put my head down and work hard, management will notice and they will reward me. The work will speak for itself.
The work never speaks for itself.
And months went by. A whole year went by.
Nothing.
Finally, she was so frustrated, she worked up the courage to ask for the promotion.
And what happened?
Her manager was totally shocked. He looked at her and said, I have been waiting for you to ask.
Oh, man. That hurts. That physically hurts to hear.
He interpreted her silence not as humility, but as a complete lack of drive. He thought she was content exactly where she was.
Wow.
He thought, Sarah is happy in this role. She isn't pushing for more. Let's just leave her there.
We really forget that managers aren't staring at us all day thinking about our careers. They're thinking about their own careers and their budgets and the fires they have to put out.
Exactly. They are not mind readers. They are busy humans. If you do not signal your ambition clearly, it does not exist to them.
You have to advocate for yourself.
You must. You have to put your ambition on their radar.
So we have to ask. We can't wait in silence, but when do we ask? Do we just march into the office on a random Tuesday and demand a new title? Hey, boss, it's Tuesday, pay me more.
Timing is everything in engineering, and it is everything in this negotiation. Do not kick the door down on a random Tuesday.
Noted. No kicking doors.
Obviously, there are natural windows, like annual reviews. Those are built into the calendar. But the sources highlight a much more effective tactical window.
What is the best window?
Post-project success.
Strike while the iron is hot.
We have the case of Marcus in the material. Marcus was a lead developer. He wanted to move up to director. He waited until immediately after a major, highly visible product launch.
All right.
The launch was massively successful. Everyone was high-fiving in the halls. The stress of the last 6 months was finally released. He was the absolute hero of the moment.
And that is when he booked the meeting.
That is exactly when he booked the meeting, because in that specific moment, his immense value was fresh in everyone's mind.
The glow was still there.
It is much, much harder to say no to the person who literally just saved the day. The emotional bank account with his boss was completely full. The boss is feeling good, generous, and relieved.
It is emotional leverage.
Yes.
Now, what about the environment itself? Because not every company operates the same way. The sources talk about rigid versus fluid cultures.
This is a crucial distinction to make before you ask. A rigid organization. Think of a traditional legacy bank, or a massive government agency, or an old manufacturing conglomerate.
Lots of rules.
Right. They value tenure. They have strict HR rules. They require specific certifications. There is a very defined ladder, and you must climb it rung by rung. You simply cannot skip rung 4 to get to rung 6, no matter how good you are.
And a fluid organization.
Think of a fast-growing tech startup. It is entirely merit-based. It is a bit chaotic. If you are 22 years old and you are an absolute genius, you can be a vice president. If you solve the biggest problem, you get the biggest reward.
So the mistake is treating one culture like the other.
Exactly. We have the case of Jennifer. She worked at a very traditional, rigid firm. She tried to use a startup pitch. She went in and said, I am doing great work. Promote me now. Look at my incredible output.
And she hit a brick wall.
She hit a massive brick wall.
Because she didn't have the years of service. Or whatever arbitrary box they needed checked.
Right. She asked way too early for that specific culture. The HR manual literally forbade it. She had to adapt her strategy.
What did she do?
She realized she needed to do the required corporate training modules. She had to get a certification, and she had to wait for the official cycle. It was not about her skill. It was about respecting the system.
You have to know the rules of the game you are actually playing.
Exactly. If you are playing chess, do not try to score a touchdown.
Okay, so we know when to ask. We know the cultural context. Now we need the ammunition for the pitch itself. The sources call this the promotion portfolio.
This is your hard evidence. And please, everyone listening, memorize this. I worked hard is an opinion. I reduced delivery time by 23% is data.
Opinion versus data. We want data. Every time.
You must bring the data. You need a portfolio. You need to prove the return on investment of your new salary.
There was a really great example of this in the reading, David.
David is my absolute favorite example here. He was in account management. He didn't just walk into his review and say, the clients really love me.
Because anyone can say that.
Exactly. He walked in with a physical folder. He set it on the desk. Inside were 23 printed emails from happy clients praising his specific work.
That is such an incredible power move. Putting a physical stack of paper on the boss's desk, it makes a thud.
It makes a very satisfying thud, and it makes your value irrefutable. It is social proof.
It isn't just you bragging.
No. It is not David saying he is good.
Yeah.
It is 23 other professionals saying David is good. It is incredibly hard for a manager to argue with a physical stack of printed emails.
It turns the conversation from totally subjective to objective.
It moves it from, I feel like I deserve this, to, the evidence shows I have clearly earned this.
So you have your portfolio. You are armed with data. But you also have to make sure you are asking for the right job. This brings us to what the sources call the competency trap.
This is where a lot of very smart people stall out in their careers. They assume that the next level up is just doing more of what they do now, but with the better title.
I am a great coder, so I will naturally be a great lead coder. Or I am a killer salesperson, so obviously I will be a great sales manager.
But often, the next roll up is fundamentally different. It is not about writing code anymore. It is about managing the people who write the code.
Right.
It is not about selling to clients. It is about strategy and hiring. Look at the case of Lisa.
What was Lisa's situation?
She wanted a manager role. She thought it was just about being really good at her daily tasks. But she decided to do a gap analysis first.
What does it mean, a gap analysis?
She actually read the job description for the manager role, and she interviewed 2 people currently in that role. She realized that the job required managing a departmental budget.
Which she had never done.
Which she had never done. She had never even opened a corporate spreadsheet to manage profit and loss.
So she had a gap.
A big gap. So instead of blindly asking for the job and getting rejected for lack of experience, she took a finance course first.
She filled the gap before making the ask.
Exactly. Do the job, then get the job. She demonstrated she had the skills before she demanded the title. She completely de-risked the promotion for her boss. By the time she formally asked, she was already doing the work.
Okay, we are finally in the room. We have avoided the traps. We are pitching. How do we structure the actual story we tell? Because we cannot just sit there and ramble about how great we are for an hour.
You use the STAR method. It is a very classic interview technique, but it works brilliantly for internal promotions too.
STAR. Break down the acronym for me.
Situation, task, action, result.
Walk me through a hypothetical example.
Sure. So, situation. You say, last year we were losing 10% of our new customers. You set the scene. You establish the stakes.
Got it. Then task.
Task. My objective was to fix the retention process and stop the bleeding. You define your specific challenge within the situation.
Then action.
Action. I built an entirely new automated onboarding flow and trained the support team on it. This is what you actually did, not the team, you.
Emphasizing your own agency. And finally, result.
Result. Customer retention went up 15% in Q3, saving the company $100,000. This is the ultimate payoff.
Boom. Clear, concise, causal.
And the pro tip here is lead with the headline.
What do you mean?
Do not bury the lead. Start your pitch with, I increased retention by 15%, and then use the STAR method to explain how you did it. Grab their attention instantly with the result.
Because executives only care about results.
Executives care about the destination, not the plane ride. Tell them where you landed the plane first.
Now, the hard part. We have to talk about the worst case scenario. You do all of this preparation. You have the portfolio. You have the timing. You deliver the perfect STAR pitch. And they look at you and say, no.
It happens. Budgets are tight. Politics intervene. And how you react to that no defines your future even more than a yes would have.
Most people get super defensive when they hear no. Or they completely shut down. Or they go back to their desk and start updating their resume immediately to find a new job.
Or they get visibly angry in the room. But the absolute pro move, treat the no as data. It is just information. It is feedback on your proposal.
There was the story of Thomas in the material. That one stood out to me.
Thomas, yes. He asked for a senior leadership role. He prepared well. He pitched. He was told no. And the specific reason given was that the executive team felt he was arrogant.
Ouch. That is deeply personal. That is really hard to hear without getting defensive. That feels like a direct attack on his character.
It definitely is personal. But instead of fighting the feedback or arguing with them, Thomas showed incredible maturity. He asked for coaching.
How did he phrase it?
He said, okay, I hear that feedback. I do not want to be perceived that way. Can you help me change that perception? Can we set up a mentorship plan on this specific issue?
Wow. By calmly asking for coaching on his own arrogance, he proved in real time that he wasn't arrogant.
Exactly. He immediately demonstrated the very leadership maturity they accused him of lacking. He turned the no into a concrete development plan. He stayed engaged in the game.
Did it work?
6 months later, he got the promotion.
That is just playing 4D chess right there. What a pivot.
And if the no is simply not yet, or we do not have the budget right now, you absolutely must lock in a revisit date.
Do not let the request die in corporate limbo.
Right. You say, okay, I understand the budget constraint. Can we put a meeting on the calendar to revisit this in exactly 6 months?
Make them commit to a timeline.
Make them commit to a next step. Keep the file open on their desk.
And finally, the money itself. When do we actually talk about the numbers, the salary bump?
Sequence matters incredibly here. Value first, price second.
Explain that sequence.
You must get the manager to agree that you are the absolute right person for the expanded role before you ever mention a dollar amount.
Establish the fit first.
Once they are emotionally and logically committed to you as the perfect solution to their problem, the price just becomes a logistical detail to be worked out.
What happens if you bring up money too early?
If you lead with price, you are just a cost item on a spreadsheet. You want them to think, we absolutely need Marcus for this role. Now how do we find the budget to afford him?
That makes total sense. Establish the desire for the product, then negotiate the cost of the product.
Exactly.
So, bringing this all together, we have looked at the granular engineering of the meeting room, and we have looked at the strategic maneuvering of the promotion.
And they are deeply connected concepts.
How so? Summarize the connection for me.
They are both fundamentally about moving past our gut feelings and relying on structure. A bad meeting is just bad engineering. A missed promotion is usually bad strategy. In both cases, human nature tells us to stay silent because it feels safer.
We want to hide.
We stay silent in the zombie meeting to avoid social conflict. We stay silent about our career ambitions to avoid the sting of rejection.
But the silence is the actual enemy.
Artificial harmony and silence are the enemies of progress. The sources tell us over and over that the only way to move forward, whether it is moving a stalled project forward in a conference room or moving your own career forward on the org chart, is to actively speak up.
But not just to make random noise.
Right. To speak up with purpose, with thorough preparation, and with a strategy.
You know, even if the promotion request is denied, just having that fully prepared strategic discussion completely changes how leadership sees you, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It is a transformation. You transform in their eyes from a mere worker who just waits to be assigned tasks into a potential leader who actively understands the business.
Their shift in reputation is permanent.
It is. Regardless of the immediate answer on the money, you have signaled to them that you are a player on the board, not just a pawn.
I love that. The very act of asking the right way is a victory in itself because it changes the dynamic.
It completely redefined you in the organization.
Well, this has been a massive unpacking of our professional lives. I know I am looking at my next calendar invite with a very, very different set of eyes.
No more zombies for us.
No more zombies. And for everyone listening right now, here is a provocative thought to leave you with, straight from the implications of our sources today. We talked a lot about how silence and artificial harmony ruin teams and stall out bright careers.
We did. It's the core issue.
So ask yourself this. Where in your professional life right now are you staying silent simply because it feels safer? Is there a project you know is failing, but you won't say it? Is there a role you know you deserve, but you won't ask for it? Because the data clearly suggests that the safety of science is a complete illusion. The real safety, the psychological safety and the career safety only comes when you finally break the silence and start the negotiation.
Well said.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Thank you.
Now go out there and engineer something better. See you next time. You know that feeling. It's a very specific visceral sensation.
Oh, yeah.
It usually starts right deep in the stomach, like a cold knot tightening, and then it works its way up. Your chest feels a little constricted. Maybe your palms get that weird clammy sheen to them.
The worst.
Right. And you've checked your calendar, probably 3 times in the last 10 minutes, even though you know exactly what time the meeting is. Yeah. You're just staring at the clock, watching the seconds tick by, and your fight or flight response is just going completely haywire.
It really is the biological equivalent of being hunted by a predator, except, you are sitting in an ergonomic chair in a perfectly climate-controlled office.
Exactly. Your body legitimately thinks a saber-toothed tiger is waiting for you in the conference room. But actually, it's just your boss, Dave. And you are about to ask him for a promotion. It's basically the Sunday Scaries, but it's happening on a Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m.
It is arguably the most high-stakes conversation of an entire professional career. And what's fascinating to me as we get into this is that while we prepare endlessly for the work itself,
right, the actual job,
the coding, the sales, the marketing, whatever it is, we rarely, if ever, prepare for the business of our own careers. We treat this conversation like it's some kind of terrifying anomaly rather than what it actually is, which is a standard business process.
Yeah, it feels like walking into a courtroom where literally everyone knows the law except you. You just feel exposed. And that imposter syndrome kicks in so hard. You sit there thinking, who am I to ask for this? Am Am I really that good? What if they just laugh me out of the room?
And that is exactly why we are doing this deep dive today. We are looking at a really massive stack of insights regarding strategic negotiation, specifically focusing on the art. And it truly is an art of securing a promotion.
Yes.
We are pulling heavily from a really comprehensive discussion by the Advanced Learner Studio, along with some supporting psychological research on negotiation dynamics. And I want to set the stage right here. Our mission today is to completely rewire the way you, the listener, approach this entire concept.
We are going for a total mindset shift because I think if we're being honest with ourselves, most of us approach a promotion conversation with entirely the wrong energy. We go in there feeling like we're asking for a favor.
Yes, the Oliver Twist fallacy.
That's the perfect name for it. We're holding out our little empty wooden bowl, looking up at the benevolent manager, and timidly whispering, "Please, sir, can I have some more?"
It is the most common and easily the most damaging mistake in the corporate world. We view a promotion as a gift. We view it as this reward for good behavior. We think, I've been a good soldier, I haven't caused any trouble. Surely the system is just going to reward me.
But the source material is screaming that this is dead wrong. The system isn't designed to reward you. It's designed to maintain stability and keep costs down.
Precisely. A promotion is not a favor. It is a business proposal. It is a transaction. You are essentially saying to the organization, I am providing X amount of value, and the market rate for that value is Y.
Okay.
It is about bridging the gap between your current output and the organization's valuation of that output. When you strip away the emotion, the fear, the desperation, the please like me energy, and you look at it purely as a strategic business proposal, the fear begins to dissipate. It stops being personal and it starts being structural.
Yeah, I love that distinction. It takes the me out of it. It's not, I want more money because my rent went up or I bought a new car. It's more like this asset, which happens to be me, is generating more yield, and we need to adjust the pricing model to reflect that.
Exactly. But before we get to the actual tactics, and we have some really incredible granular tactics to cover today, from building a promotion portfolio to finding your hero moment, we really have to spend a minute on the headspace.
Yeah, let's unpack that.
Because there is a core tension described in the research between the employee's fear and the manager's expectation, this disconnect is basically where careers go to die.
It really is. And I think a lot of people will resonate with this employee headspace concept. It's that fear of looking entitled. You don't want to be that person on the team who is always complaining or always asking for more. You convince yourself, if I just keep my head down, if I work 60 hours a week and I produce great results, they will notice. They have to notice.
The myth of the meritocracy. It's a beautiful idea, really. We all inherently want to believe that the world is fair and that hard work is automatically, magically rewarded. But in corporate structure, silence is almost never interpreted as humility.
So how is it interpreted then?
It's interpreted as satisfaction.
Oh, wow.
Think about it. If you are doing a phenomenal job and you never say a single word about wanting to move up, your manager isn't sitting there thinking, wow, what a humble, stoic servant leader.
No, they're probably relieved.
Exactly. Your manager is thinking, thank goodness that role is filled by someone reliable, so I don't have to worry about it. I can focus on the 10 other fires I have to put out today.
Ouch. I mean, that hurts to hear, but it makes so much sense.
It's not malicious. That is the really important thing to remember. Managers are overwhelmed. They have their own bosses, their own budget cuts, their own stress. They are not mind readers. If you don't light a flare and say, hey, I'm over here and I'm ready for the next challenge, they will happily let you stay in your current box forever.
This brings us perfectly to the story of Sarah from the case studies. I found this one so relatable, it actually made me cringe a little bit because, honestly, I have been Sarah early in my career.
Sarah is the classic cautionary tale of the silent high performer. She was a marketing manager, absolutely crushing her KPIs across the board. She was effectively doing the work of a director. But she spent months, literally 6 entire months, just agonizing over the promotion conversation.
She was just trapped in her own head.
Deep in her head, she played out every conceivable worst-case scenario. She thought, if I ask, I'll look ungrateful. I'll look like I'm not a team player. Maybe they'll think I'm greedy or aggressive. She was negotiating against herself before she even entered the room.
Which is something we do all the time. We reject ourselves so the boss doesn't have to. It's a defense mechanism.
Exactly. And the real twist in this story is what happened when she finally did ask. She worked up the nerve, she walked into the office, sweaty palms, voice shaking, and she made her case. And her manager wasn't annoyed. He wasn't angry. He was completely shocked.
Shocked. Like he had no idea.
Completely blindsided. He looked at her and essentially said, "I have been waiting for you to bring this up." In his mind, her silence meant she wasn't interested in the stress of the next level. He thought she was perfectly happy where she was. In fact, he had actually considered her for a high-level project a few months prior, but passed her over because he assumed she didn't have the drive for it, solely because she hadn't asked.
That is wild to me. So her attempt to be humble and put her head down actually cost her a massive opportunity because it just looked like passivity.
That is the real danger of silence. You cannot wait for the tap on the shoulder. It rarely comes. You have to initiate the transaction yourself.
Okay, so the first rule is clear. You have to make the ask. You have to speak up. But, and this is a huge, but you can't just barge in there like a bull in a china shop and demand things. The research spends a lot of time talking about decoding your environment. And this was really interesting to me, specifically the distinction between a rigid organization and a fluid organization.
This is a critical step. Before you plan your speech, you have to diagnose the patient. You have to understand the ecosystem you are actually operating in.
Let's break these down for everyone listening. What does a rigid organization look like? I'm assuming we're talking about pretty old school corporate structures here.
Right. Think traditional banks, heavy manufacturing, government agencies, legacy insurance firms. In a rigid organization, process is king. The hierarchy is often written in stone, or at least in a very thick HR handbook. They value tenure heavily. They value formal certifications. There are often really explicit policies like you cannot be promoted to level 4 senior manager until you have served exactly 24 months as a level 3 manager.
It's highly bureaucratic.
It is, but it's also predictable. In these environments, merit is often secondary to compliance. You could be an absolute genius, a prodigy, but if you haven't punched your ticket for the required time, the answer is no, simply because that's the policy.
And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have the fluid organization.
These are your startups, your modern tech firms, creative agencies, maybe some high-growth sales organizations. Here, speed and impact are king. They do not care if you've been there 6 months or 6 years. They don't care if you have a master's degree or no degree at all. If you are moving the needle on revenue or product development, you move up.
So the danger, I assume, is running the wrong playbook in the wrong stadium.
Precisely. And that brings us to Jennifer.
Poor Jennifer. I really felt for her when reading this.
Jennifer's story is an absolute masterclass in right ask, wrong environment. She came from a fluid background, a scrappy tech startup where she rose very quickly. She was used to things moving at the speed of light. Then she took a job at a very traditional legacy financial firm.
Talk about culture shock.
Massive culture shock, but she crushed it. For 9 months, she put up great numbers, she improved efficiency, she did everything right. So channeling her inner startup energy, she marched into her boss's office right at the 9-month mark and asked for a significant promotion.
Which, to be fair, in her old job would have been totally normal. Maybe even expected if she was performing that well.
Completely normal. But here, she hit an absolute brick wall. And it wasn't just a simple no, it was a no that actively damaged her reputation. By asking at 9 months in a culture that had an unwritten but widely known 18-month tenure rule, she didn't look ambitious to them, she looked naive.
She looked like she just didn't get it.
Exactly. She misread the terrain completely. Leadership looked at her and thought, she doesn't understand how we work here. She's too impatient, she's not really one of us yet.
But she managed to turn it around, right? And this isn't a tragedy, it's really a lesson in pivoting your strategy.
It is. She realized her mistake. She stopped trying to force the fluid startup playbook onto a rigid bank. She realized, okay, I am in a rigid environment. I need to play by their rules. So she did the time. She took the required internal leadership courses, which probably felt painfully slow and bureaucratic to someone from a startup, but she did them without complaining. And then at month 14, armed with that compliance and her proven track record, she asked again.
And she got it.
She got it. Because she finally framed her request in the language of that specific organization.
So if you're listening to this, take a look around your office right now. Is it rigid or fluid? Do people wear suits or do they wear hoodies? Are promotions announced annually in a formal company-wide memo, or do titles just kind of magically change on Slack one afternoon?
Yeah.
Knowing where you are determines how you ask.
And keep in mind, you can actually have a fluid team inside a rigid company.
Oh, that's interesting, like a hybrid situation.
Exactly. You might be in the innovation lab of a 100-year-old bank. In that case, you have to navigate both simultaneously. You need the aggressive impact metrics for your direct boss, but you also need to check the compliance boxes for corporate HR.
That is such a great point. It's rarely perfectly black and white. Okay, let's talk about timing. Because even if you know your environment perfectly, when you ask seems to matter just as much as how you ask. The sources strongly distinguish between natural windows and leverage points.
Most people default to the natural window. That's the annual performance review. It's the safe, socially acceptable, scheduled time to talk about your career. And because it's scheduled for you, it feels comfortable. You don't have to awkwardly request a random meeting. It's already on the calendar.
But safety doesn't always equal leverage. In fact, safety usually means incredibly low leverage.
Correct. The core problem with the annual review is competition. Think about it from the manager's perspective. During review season, your manager is reviewing everyone on the team. The conversation budget is being sliced up across the entire department. In that moment, you are just another face in the line. You are another line item on a spreadsheet. You are competing for a fixed pool of money against every single one of your peers.
So you become a commodity in that moment.
Exactly. You desperately want to avoid being a commodity. You want to be a unique, indispensable solution, and this is why you need to look for leverage points instead.
A leverage point is what the source material calls the hero moment.
The hero moment. This is a specific window in time created by your own exceptional success. It usually happens immediately following the successful completion of a high-stress, high-value project.
We have the case study of Marcus here. Marcus is a software developer, and he really nailed this concept of timing.
Marcus is a brilliant example of understanding basic human psychology. He didn't wait for his work anniversary. He didn't wait for the December review cycle. He looked at his workflow. His team was working on a critical feature release. This was something high visibility, high stress, the kind of project where the VP of engineering is asking for status updates every single morning.
High pressure situation.
Immense pressure. Marcus and his team pushed incredibly hard, and they delivered that feature 3 weeks ahead of schedule. The stakeholders were thrilled. The boss was incredibly relieved because it made him look like a genius to the VP. The whole vibe in the office was celebratory.
The dopamine is just flowing. Everyone is high-fiving.
That is the hero moment. And Marcus struck while the iron was extremely hot. He requested the promotion meeting immediately following that success.
Why does that work so well from a psychological standpoint? Is it literally just that the boss is in a good mood?
It's deeper than just mood. It relies on recency bias. The human brain is hardwired to prioritize the most recent information it has received. When the manager looks at Marcus in that specific moment, they don't see an employee who is maybe late to a meeting twice last month. They see the absolute savior who just delivered this critical win and removed a ton of stress from their life. The feeling of gratitude and relief is fresh and palpable.
It's almost like when you go grocery shopping when you're starving. You buy way more than you need. The manager is hungry for competence, and Marcus just served an absolute feast.
That's a perfect analogy. If Marcus had waited 3 months for his annual review, that intense feeling of relief would have faded completely. The project would just be a distant memory. It would be back to business as usual. By asking in the hero moment, he maximized his leverage to the absolute limit. He secured that promotion 6 weeks later, largely because the emotional memory of his value was at its absolute peak.
So the takeaway here is, do not let a good crisis or a good success go to waste. If you just landed a huge enterprise client, or you solved a massive database bug, or you organized a flawless industry event, that is your window. Step through it. Don't wait for corporate permission.
Correct. The HR calendar is totally arbitrary. Value is real. Always follow the value.
Okay, so we know we need to ask. We know we need to read the room between rigid and fluid, and we know we need to time it right with the hero moment. Now let's get into the actual room. The door closes.
Yeah.
You are sitting across from the boss. What do you actually bring with you?
This is where most people completely fail. They bring absolutely nothing. Maybe a notebook, maybe just their memories. They try to just wing it. They think, well, I know what I did all year. I'll just tell them. We'll have a nice chat.
A chat. That sounds so pleasant. But a chat doesn't get you a 20% raise.
No, it doesn't. A chat gets you a pat on the back and a keep up the good work.
You need a presentation. The sources strongly recommend creating what they call a promotion portfolio. I really love this concept. Let's dig into the mechanics of it. Because when I hear portfolio, my mind instantly goes to an artist carrying a big leather case of sketches. What does this look like for a project manager or a B2B salesperson?
It is the concrete physical evidence of your value. And I want to really emphasize the word physical here. We have a great case study of David, an account executive. David went decidedly old school with this approach, and it was brilliant.
Tell us what David did.
David walked into his promotion meeting with a physical manila folder. In a modern corporate world where literally everything is a Google Doc or a Slack message, he brought actual atoms into the room.
That's a power move.
Yeah.
It instantly creates a presence.
It creates what I like to call the thud factor. When you drop a physical folder on a glass conference table, it makes a sound thud. It subconsciously signals to the other person, I have prepared, this is serious, we're doing business right now.
What was actually inside the folder, though?
Two crucial things. First, a beautifully formatted spreadsheet of his metrics. Hard, undeniable numbers. 142% of his quota. $2.3 million in newly generated revenue. It is very hard to argue with math. But it was the second thing he included that really struck me as psychological genius.
The social proof.
Yes. He had physically printed out on paper, 23 separate emails from ecstatic, happy clients.
Wait, printed emails? That feels so retro, like 1999.
It does, doesn't it? But think about the psychology of the recipient. If he had just emailed a PDF compilation to his boss, the manager would have scrolled through it on a screen for maybe 4 seconds while simultaneously checking a notification from HR and thinking about what they're going to have for lunch. Digital evidence is ephemeral. It's just pixels.
But it's a stack of physical paper.
When you slide a literal stack of 23 distinct pieces of paper across a desk, it occupies physical space. The manager has to physically reach out and pick them up. They have to flip through them page by page. They see the actual logos of the clients and the signatures. It fundamentally changes the dynamic of the room from David says he is a good employee to the open market dictates that David is a highly valuable asset.
It creates a reality that is physically hard to deny. You just can't argue with a stack of paper staring at you.
And there's another, perhaps even more important layer to this strategy. It creates a ready-made file for the manager. Remember, your direct manager usually cannot promote you unilaterally. They don't have that power. They have to go ask their boss or the VP or a compensation committee.
Right, they have to become your internal advocate.
And the brutal truth is, most managers are either lazy or they're just too busy to build a case for you. If you make them do the hard work of remembering why you are good and gathering your metrics, they simply won't do it. But if you hand them a physical folder and say, here is the evidence, you have just done their job for them. You have literally given them the exact ammunition they need to go fight your battle behind closed doors.
You're arming them. You are writing the script for their meeting with the VP.
Exactly. You want to make it as frictionlessly easy as possible for them to say yes.
Now, I want to pivot to a really tricky part of this whole process. We've been talking a lot about proving you are exceptionally good at your current job. But being good at your current job doesn't necessarily mean you will be good at the next job. The sources identify this as the competency trap.
This is exactly where so many high performers stall out and get frustrated. We assume that a management role is just, doing what I do now, but telling other people to do it too.
Right. The logic is, I'm the best coder on the team, so obviously I should be the lead developer. Or I'm the best closer, so I should definitely be the sales manager.
And historically, that assumption is often a disaster. The skills required to sell software are fundamentally not the skills required to manage a team of software salespeople. Selling requires influence, hustle, objection handling, closing. Managing requires budget forecasting, conflict resolution, hiring, firing, and navigating internal corporate politics.
Those are totally different sports. It's like saying, hey, you're a really great tennis player, so you should be a fantastic baseball coach.
Exactly. And if you walk into a promotion meeting and you only talk about how incredibly good you are at your current tasks, like, I sold the most widgets this quarter, you are completely missing the point. You haven't proven you can do the new job. In fact, you might actually be scaring the manager because they're sitting there thinking, man, if I promote him, I lose my absolute best salesperson and I potentially gain a terrible manager. That's a lose-lose for me.
So how do we actually solve this? How do you prove you can do a job that you literally haven't been given yet? It feels like a massive catch-22.
You perform what the research calls a gap analysis. This is what Lisa did in our next case study, and she executed it flawlessly. Lisa was a marketing coordinator, and she was eyeing a marketing manager role. She didn't just sit at her desk and guess what the new job entailed. She went out and actively investigated it.
How did she do that without looking like she was, plotting a corporate coup?
She used informational interviews, she casually invited a few current managers out for coffee, and she asked really smart, revealing questions like, what does your day-to-day actually look like? What is the hardest part of your job that nobody on my level ever sees?
She gathered intel.
Exactly. And she discovered something very surprising. She found out that the manager role she wanted was actually about 40% budgeting and internal resource politics. Those were skills she didn't use at all in her daily creative design work.
So she identified a gap, a major skills gap.
A massive gap. If she had gone in and asked for the promotion right then, she almost certainly would have been rejected because she lacked those core financial skills. So she proactively fixed it. She enrolled in a corporate finance course online. She actually asked her current boss if she could sit in on a few budget meetings just to, quote, learn the ropes and understand the business better.
She closed the gap before the meeting even happened.
The absolute mantra here is, do the job, then get the job. By the time she finally walked into the negotiation room, she could look her boss in the eye and say, I know this new role requires heavy budgeting. Here is the financial certification I just completed on my own time, and here are my analytical notes from shadowing the Q3 budget review last month.
That is so incredibly smart. It completely removes the risk for the manager. They aren't placing a risky bet on your potential anymore. They are just recognizing a capability that already clearly exists.
Exactly. You are systematically de-risking the promotion. Managers, by their very nature, are risk-averse creatures. If you can show them that you are already seamlessly operating at the next level, the promotion just becomes a formality, a paperwork exercise.
Okay, so let's review where we are in this journey. You have analyzed the culture, rigid versus fluid. You've picked your timing, looking for that hero moment. You have built your physical portfolio to create that thud factor. And you've closed your skills gap. Now, you are physically sitting in the chair. The meeting has started. How do you actually structure the words coming out of your mouth?
Structure is everything in this moment. You need a compelling narrative arc. Now, the standard corporate recommendation is the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. Everyone learns it. It's a classic interview technique.
Everyone knows STAR, but honestly, I feel like people use it wrong all the time. They get so bogged down in the situation part, they start telling this long story like, well, it was a rainy Tuesday and the main server was down and Steve was on vacation.
Exactly. They bury the lead. By the time they get to the result, the manager has checked out. The source material suggests a crucial modification to this. Lead with the impact. Do not make the manager wait for the punchline.
Let's look at Alicia's case study. She really mastered this approach.
Alicia nailed this. She didn't start with a meandering backstory about how hard she worked. She opened her pitch with a strategy the military calls BLUF, bottom line up front. She sat down, looked her manager in the eye and said, over the last 6 months, I led the rebranding project that saved this company $300,000 in agency fees.
Boom. Drop the mic right there.
Immediately, in the first 10 seconds, she has anchored the entire conversation to a massive, high-value number. Now, everything else she says, every little story, every detail about late nights, is viewed through the powerful lens of $300,000 in hard savings.
It sets the price anchor. It basically subcommunicates, I am a high-value asset. Treat me accordingly.
And it commands immediate respect. It changes the tone of the room from a casual chat to a serious business review. It forces the manager to sit up, stop checking their phone, and pay attention.
I want to role play this for a second, just so listeners can really hear the visceral difference between the two approaches. Here is what we'll call the bad ask. Let me get into character here. So I've been here for like 3 years now. And I feel like I've been working really hard lately, and I was hoping we could maybe talk about my title, because Sarah got promoted last year, and I just feel like I do just as much work as she does.
Oh, wow. That is physically painful to listen to. It's complaining, it's comparing yourself to others. It's entirely focused on subjective fairness and time served rather than business value.
Right. Now, here's the strategic ask based on the framework. Thanks for making the time today. I want to briefly review the outcomes of the Q3 project. As you know, we hit 120% of the target, which added $50,000 to the bottom line. Based on that sustained performance and the fact that I've voluntarily taken over the team training, which saves you about 5 hours a week of your own time, I'd like to discuss transitioning my title to senior manager to accurately reflect the strategic value I'm currently delivering.
Night and day. It's a completely different language. The second one is a professional partner talking to another professional partner. The first one is a child asking a parent for an allowance increase.
It's so clear when you hear it spoken out loud. But to be fair, it takes a lot of courage to speak that way to an authority figure.
It does. It absolutely does. But preparation breeds confidence. If you actually have the physical portfolio sitting there and you have the hard data to back it up, you aren't bluffing. You aren't being arrogant. You are literally just reporting the news of your own success.
Now, we have to talk about the part that absolutely everyone dreads. You do everything right. You have the beautiful portfolio, the perfect timing, the flawless pitch, and the answer is no. Or maybe even worse, not yet.
A rejection.
Just feels like a punch directly in the gut. It feels so personal. It honestly feels like a romantic breakup. I remember getting a no early in my career, and I literally had to go hide in the bathroom to cry. I felt completely humiliated.
That is a completely natural human reaction. But the most strategic thing you can possibly do in that moment, and I acknowledge this is the hardest thing to do, is to aggressively suppress that emotional reaction and treat the no strictly as data.
Data. How on earth is someone telling you you're not good enough considered data?
First off, no rarely actually means you are not good enough. It often means not right now because of timing, or I literally do not have the budget this quarter, or you are missing this one specific tangible skill. If you react emotionally, if you get visibly defensive, or you completely shut down, or you start crying in the office, you actually prove their point. You prove to them that you aren't ready for the heavy emotional burden of leadership.
Wow. So your reaction to the no is actually the final secret test for the yes.
100%. We have the story of Keisha here, which perfectly illustrates this. She went in, made a great case, but faced a hard no because she lacked a specific compliance certification required for the next tier.
And I think a lot of people in that moment would have just walked away defeated. They think, oh, I don't have the piece of paper. I guess I'm stuck here forever.
Keisha didn't do that. She viewed that objection not as a wall, but as a variable she could manipulate in the negotiation. She looked at her boss and said, okay, I understand the corporate policy requires the certification. If I enroll next week and I commit to finishing the coursework in 6 months, can we agree right now to make the promotion effective upon my completion of the exam?
That is so bold.
Yeah.
She took a flat rejection and turned it into a conditional yes.
She negotiated the obstacle. She didn't argue with reality or complain that the policy was stupid. She proposed a logical solution, and the manager agreed. She got the deal.
And then there's the kind of feedback that hurts even more than being told you need a certificate. The personality feedback. You're too aggressive, or you're too quiet, or people find you difficult to work with. That cuts incredibly deep because it's not about your skills. It's about who you fundamentally are as a person.
Thomas faced exactly this scenario. He was technically brilliant, an absolute star performer on paper. But the feedback he got in the room was that he was arrogant in meetings. He made junior staff feel small, he was the smartest guy in the room, and he made sure everyone knew it constantly.
That's a huge career killer. Nobody wants to promote a jerk no matter how much money they make the company.
True. And the natural knee-jerk human reaction to being called arrogant is to arrogantly argue that you aren't arrogant.
Exactly. You just say, I'm not arrogant. You're just wrong. People are just too sensitive.
Exactly. But Thomas showed incredible maturity in that moment. He took a breath, he swallowed his considerable pride, and he asked for coaching.
He actually asked his boss for help.
He did. He said, I honestly wasn't aware I was coming across that way to the team, and that is absolutely not my intent. I want to fix this blind spot. Can you help me identify specific moments where I do this over the next month so I can actively correct the behavior?
Whoa, the mere act of accepting the feedback so gracefully almost proved the feedback was wrong in that exact moment. Or at least it proved that the problematic behavior was fixable.
It demonstrated massive emotional intelligence, or EQ. By showing he was coachable and self-aware, he instantly removed the biggest red flag his manager had against him. Navigating the no is very often just about proving you have the character and resilience to handle the yes.
And finally, let's assume you do everything right. You navigate the no, you prove your worth, you overcome the obstacles, and you finally get to the yes. Now we have to talk about the money. The money talk.
Yes. The part where the palms get sweaty all over again.
The absolute golden rule from the source material is sequence value first, price second.
Never, ever talk specific numbers until you have fundamentally agreed on the scope of the role. You want them to completely fall in love with the idea of you operating in that new position before you ever slap a price tag on it.
Right, because if you talk money too early in the process, it just becomes a cost conversation.
Yeah.
The manager is thinking, can we afford to spend 10 grand more on this department?
Exactly. But if you talk money after they've enthusiastically agreed that you are the perfect, indispensable solution to their problems, it transforms into an investment conversation. It becomes, we desperately need this person to solve our problems. What does it cost to secure them?
And when you finally do talk numbers, how do you do it? Do you just give a highly specific number?
Yeah.
Like, I want exactly $132,500?
No, generally you shouldn't. You should use a range.
Yeah.
Patricia's case study is the perfect template here. She didn't go in and say, I demand $130,000. She framed it. She said, based on my research of the external market and the newly expanded responsibilities of this role, I'm looking for a range between $125,000 and $135,000.
Why does providing a range actually work better psychologically?
It signals flexibility, which automatically makes you seem reasonable and collaborative. But, and this is the crucial psychological trick, it sets a hard floor. By saying 125 to 135, what she's really saying to the business is, I absolutely will not take less than 125,000. But phrasing it as a range sounds much softer and less aggressive than saying, I demand a minimum of 125.
So what happens if they come back and say, well, we can only do 120,000?
You don't panic. You can calmly say, I really appreciate that offer. But as I mentioned, my market research shows the absolute floor for this level of responsibility is 125. Is there anything we can creatively do with a signing bonus or perhaps extra equity or additional PTO to bridge that gap?
That's brilliant. It keeps the conversation alive and collaborative without being combative or just caving in immediately.
Exactly. You remain a partner solving a math problem together.
Okay, so let's say you win the negotiation. You get the title you wanted. You get the money you asked for. You go out and pop the champagne. Are we done? Is the mission accomplished?
Not quite. There is one final, incredibly dangerous trap waiting for you. The first 90 days.
The new sheriff in town trap.
Oh, I have seen that specific trap destroy so many promising careers. The person gets promoted, they get the new office, and suddenly they feel this overwhelming, insecure need to explicitly prove to everyone that they are the boss. They start issuing aggressive orders, changing established processes for no reason, harshly criticizing how things were done before they took charge.
It all stems from insecurity, right? It's that feeling of, I have to show them I'm in charge so they respect me.
Yes, exactly. But it completely backfires. It alienates absolutely everyone around you. Your former peers, who, remember, are now suddenly your subordinates, will deeply resent you. The source heavily advises a period of strategic humility.
Listen, learn, and build relationships first.
The transition from being a peer to being a leader is incredibly delicate. You were literally complaining about management over lunch with these exact same people yesterday. Today, you are the management approving their expense reports. That dynamic shift requires immense grace. You need to listen way more than you talk for at least the first month. Ask genuine questions. Sit down with them and ask, how can I best support you in my new role? What obstacles do you need me to remove for you?
Because true authority ultimately comes from earned respect, not just where your box sits on the organizational chart.
Exactly. Do not brandish the new title like a weapon. Wear it very lightly.
Wow. This has been such an incredible journey today. We've gone all the way from the visceral anxiety of the Sunday scaries to the strategic stud factor of the portfolio to the intense role play of the pitch and finally to navigating the tricky waters of being the new leader.
We have really covered the entire life cycle of the ask.
If we had to boil all of this down for the listener who is maybe driving to work right now, gripping the steering wheel, thinking about finally having this conversation, what are the absolute core takeaways?
First and foremost, reframe the entire ask in your mind. You are not Oliver Twist begging for scraps. You are a strategic business partner proposing a mutually beneficial deal. Stop asking for personal favors. Start proposing tangible business value.
Love that.
And second, evidence and timing. Do the work to build the physical portfolio. Do not rely on your manager's memory, because reliance on memory is just reliance on luck. And strike when the iron is actually hot. Go find or actively create your hero moment.
And the third takeaway?
The reputation shift. This is something we really haven't touched on quite enough yet. Even if you do everything right, you ask, and the final answer is a hard no, the mere act of asking fundamentally changes how leadership sees you.
How so? Like in a good way?
In a great way. You instantly shift in their minds from being just a reliable worker bee to being a potential future leader. You have actively signaled ambition. You have signaled that you take your own career trajectory seriously. As long as you do it professionally, with real preparation, and data advocating for yourself is never, ever a waste of time. It puts you firmly on the radar for the next opportunity.
I really love that perspective. A no today perfectly sets up a yes tomorrow, but that only happens if you actually have the courage to ask in the first place.
Exactly.
I want to leave everyone listening with a final, somewhat provocative thought that really stuck with me from the reading material. It's fundamentally about who actually defines your value in this world.
This really is the crux of it all.
The thought is simply this. If you never define your own value through a structured promotion request, you are passively allowing a system which is explicitly designed to minimize costs, to define your value for you.
And you better believe the system will always, always define your value lower than you do. That is literally its job.
Exactly. The corporate system wants to extract the maximum amount of work for the minimum amount of money. That's just business. It's not evil, it's just math. If you don't step in, interrupt that math and say, actually, I am worth this higher number, the system will just default to the lowest possible setting and leave you there forever.
So you have to ask yourself, is that a risk you can truly afford to take with your one life and your one career?
That is the ultimate question. Stop waiting to be magically noticed. Start actively building your case today.
And go get exactly what you're worth.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care, everyone.